Hey Pradeep, how are you? So just wanted to start 3 minutes early just to do a quick audio check and make sure you guys can hear me okay and see me okay and so forth. So if you guys can give me a quick yes or something, then we're all good. Anybody there yet? We'll just give it a sec. I got 2 more minutes to go. Hey Warrior Matty, can you hear me okay? Thanks, Lucifer. Okay, cool. So, you like my coffee mug? Hey Heather, seeing some familiar names pop up. So guys, I want to wait 2 more minutes because I said I'd officially start at the whole hour, and I just started a couple of minutes early to make sure everything's working properly, right? So just 2 more minutes. Oh, so you like my Christmas tree, yeah? Cool. Yeah, it's a big one. It's, let's see, 8 feet 5 or something. Okay, so 1 minute to go. I guess it's okay to get started, guys. What I wanted to do today is a complete open Q&A. So basically, we can talk about anything that is on your mind that you want to talk about, whether it's 3D stuff, whether it's, what are the colors of my shoes? I don't care, right? Anything you like. We'll keep it completely open. Anything I can help you guys with, just ask, all right? Okay, so let's see. How to export Maya project as a video. Well, the thing is, I assume you're talking about an animation. And an animation you can create in 2 ways. You can either render out individual images, export all of them, stitch them together, and make them into a video. Or you can batch render them straight into a video file. And the best way for you to find out how to do that is to Google batch render, or to to search batch render on my YouTube channel, because I did a video on that, right? Let's see, what else? Salary of a 3D animator. Well, that completely depends on where you live. It depends on your experience, and it depends on who you're working for. I mean, there's no way to give you an answer on that unless I have that detail. Let's see, what else? Okay, so can I explain about the animation field in Maya? What do you mean by animation field in Maya? Whether it's cool to do animations in Maya? Is that your question? And while you're thinking about that, any other questions, guys? How the future will be if you get trained in animation. Hey, Jason, how are you, buddy? Well, depending on, like I said, where you live and who you work for in animation, if you are an animator, you could make a very decent living, and that could be a very significant amount of money. But the thing is, you would have to be very, very, very good. The only tip I can give you, though, is if you are serious about becoming an animator, don't just focus on the technical software skills, so the buttons and the sliders and whatnot, but spend a lot of time studying human behavior, right? If it's something that you're going to do, if you're going to be animating human characters or human-like characters, study their behavior and focus on the small, detailed stuff. People, when they do a demo reel in animation, they tend to do the big stuff, so jumping around and so forth. What people tend to look for in an animation reel is whether you master the skill to do very subtle movements. So shifting your weight while sitting on a chair, lifting one eyebrow, fiddling with your fingers, that kind of stuff, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, good question. Valix is saying, what's the difference between using remesh and retopo? All right. Well, remesh and retopo are two very different things, right? If you, let's say, for example, have an object that you have created in ZBrush, right? And you want it to be cleaned up. You don't like your edge loops. You think they're either too far apart or too close together or messy in some areas or whatnot. What you can do is remesh. Basically, you instruct the software to do a complete remesh of the entire object from top to bottom. Now, retopo is different. Retopo is where you individually go in manually and start to add face by face onto your model until it's completely covered, right? Now, they do have a different purpose as well. Retopo is usually when you don't have a low poly model. So you have a high poly model and then you need a low poly model for the game engine, for example. You could use retopo on your high poly model to create it. Hopefully that answers that question, okay? Let's see. Ping B is saying, do I have tutorials on a Marvelous Designer on my Patreon? Well, I actually just upgraded to Marvelous Designer 9 yesterday, a brand new version, and I started to record new tutorials in Marvelous Designer, so you will be able to see them soon, okay? Young Park saying, learned a lot from watching your videos. Well, cool, thank you. Let's see, what else? So Kevin is saying, is it possible to do all your workflow within Maya from modeling to shading and everything else without having to use Substance Painter? Is that possible? Yes, it is. It is possible. Is it ideal? No, but it's possible, and people do it. I don't know why you're asking, because you specifically want to use just Maya or because you have other restrictions, but people tend to find a workflow that fits for them. And I always say that although software is very helpful and can be very cool, it's about the artists, not about the software, right? I mean, yeah, so if you want to do everything in Maya, you can do that. Okay, so Gagan is saying, ask an off-topic question. Well, we don't have a topic because it's a completely open Q&A, so you can ask anything you want. So go ahead. Let's see. Okay, interesting question. So is it wrong to take pride in something you worked really hard for while others just left it because it was difficult? I get a very bad response when I do that. Well, I mean, there's a thin line between pride and arrogance, right? I mean, being proud of work you did is that's fine. There's no problem with that. Bragging about it, telling people you're great, telling people you're better than other people, that's a whole different story, of course. I mean, if you're proud of that, I mean, no problem. You worked for that, right? So I don't see any problem with that at all. Okay, so Regina is saying, seen a lot of debate, what program to choose, Maya or 3ds Max? Okay, interesting. Well, of course, I can only tell you my personal opinion. Maya originally was more developed towards animation, so and Maya Lite specifically for gaming, but Maya, the regular Maya for animation, Maya Lite for gaming. 3ds Max traditionally is more used towards art viz, so architectural visualization, interiors, photorealistic rendering, and so forth. So they're both basically different tools. Now, there are a lot of people that do everything in 3ds Max, there are a lot of people that do everything in Maya. Kind of depends on what your preference is, right? But that's kind of the divide that I see anyway. Let's see. Okay, so Dennis is saying where to get your first job as a character artist when you finish your portfolio, where to look. Well, where to look? Yeah, that's a good one. Well, first of all, what do you mean by character artist? Do you mean a sculptor in ZBrush, or do you mean the complete pipeline? So creating the low poly, high poly, texturing, baking, possibly rigging, and so forth. There's a big difference between the two, right? So AJ is saying, can I get freelance work from you? Well, no, basically not. I mean, I still work for a couple of clients, but I spend a lot of time on YouTube. And whenever I get a question to do a project, I usually pass it on to people in my network, right? Okay, so Dennis is saying he does a complete pipeline. Well, I've said this in many live streams before, but I don't know if you were there or not. Simply looking for job postings, that's not going to cut it. What you need to do is you need to make yourself known and seen. So go online, become a member of relevant forums, and starts to build a name for yourself. So post quality work, ask quality questions, give quality feedback to people. Over time, you will start to build a reputation. People will know who you are. They will keep you in mind whenever they see a job posting, and then you take it from there. And then the other thing is make sure you're on LinkedIn. Make sure you maintain your profile on LinkedIn, and of course, ArtStation. Okay. Okay. So Life is a Joke is saying, is Maya worth it to learn it for the film industry? Absolutely. A lot of companies in the film industry use Maya. For example, there's a little movie, I don't know if you ever heard of it, it's called Avatar, completely made in Maya. Let's see. Callum is saying, any tips for a good portfolio? Well, let me ask you this. What do you specialize in? What kind of work do you do? Because your portfolio heavily depends on what type of work you do. If you are, let's say, a character animator, very different than somebody that models cars, right? Hey, it's just what, how are you? Long time no see, buddy. Okay, what else, guys? Read the master modeling, but I'm also confused on where I should start because there's so many things. Okay, so Jay is saying dreams of mastering 3D modeling, so confused where to start. Well, regardless of whatever role you end up in at some point, right, it is extremely important that you understand the basics. So when you start modeling, my advice would be start with low poly prop modeling. So a crate, a chair, a table, and so forth. Then once you master that, start with simple organic low poly models, like a simple cartoon type character and so forth. Then when you master all of that, you start to create high poly models and start baking and applying PBR textures. And then if you feel like it, you can go on from there and look into rigging and lighting and animation and so forth, right? Let's see. So Ahmad is saying, I'm working on a ship. Can you give me some advice to make pieces of wood crack? Well, actually, I did a ZBrush tutorial on that. That's coming soon. Okay. So yeah. Let's see. Am I planning to do any character modeling tutorials in ZBrush? I am, but I will probably always be doing that stylized. So for those of you who don't know what that means, more towards the cartoony side, more towards the kind of like Disney figure side, if you know what I mean, and not necessarily photorealistic humans. Let's see. Can I tell us anything about 3D printing and making money with it? Is it okay to start with some small things like a keychain, small toys, and something? Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, though, that making money with 3D printing, I mean, if you actually are talking about printing objects in 3D and then selling them, the competition is brutal, right? Absolutely brutal. So I don't see how you would make any money doing that at all. if you want to make money with something like that, what I would do or advise is to create 3D files that are ready for printing. So, for example, and this is just a tip for all of you, if you're looking to make money with your 3D modeling, keep in mind that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there that use miniatures. They have trains, they have little houses and all kind of stuff. Now, this is a huge industry, right? Like the electronic toy trains, if you know what I mean. Now, they go online because they need very, very tiny objects. They need a little fence, they need a little tree, they need a little door, a little post box, all that kind of stuff. If you create models for that, 3D models that they can then go out and print for themselves and paint, then there's a big market out there. So consider that, right? Let's see. Good efficient way of baking down from high poly to low poly. Okay, so Callum is saying a good efficient way to bake down high to low poly. Well, first of all, there's a method and there's a software. I typically use what you call it, a substance painter. But there are other ways of doing it. You can do that in XNormal. You can do that in Maya. You can use all sorts of software for that. The key for a clean bake is whether your topology is correct, right? And whether it's clean and really have a good proper UV. So once you have that, you can basically use any software, unless that's not your question, but then let me know, right? Let's see. Okay, so making a good a wood workshop scene. Could I have an idea on how to create good-looking sawdust? Well, first of all, is it a still render or an animation? Because you can do that in post. So add it in Photoshop. And if you don't want to do that, you can use our particle system instead to do that, right? Okay, Lakesh saying, can you do a complete Maya animation tutorial? Well, that kind of depends on what you think is complete, right? Okay, so Ravi's saying, if a client wants to change something in the model, should you charge extra? Usually, yes. What you do is you sign a contract with your client up front, and then you say, okay, well, this includes 1 or 2 changes. And then let's say they come back and they want 2 more changes. You agree up front, okay, 2 changes are included. Any further change will cost you so much per change, right? Let's see. Ravi's saying, can a student face any type of copyright? What do you mean face? You mean that somebody will come after you because of copyright? I mean, everybody is liable to copyright, whether you're a student or not. When it comes to whether you can protect your work with copyright, that's a whole different question. So Shishwata is saying, how do you get freelance gigs as a beginner? Well, basically what I said before, go onto forums, build your network, make sure people know who you are and so forth. And then also, try to get your work out. Now, if that is something that takes too long for you, one thing you can try, or 2 things actually. One is a website called peopleperhour.com. The other one is called Fiverr. You've probably heard of that. Fiverr is a website where people offer their services. I'll make you a 3D logo, I'll make you this, I'll make you that, and so forth. And then you ask a certain amount. People go online, they pay up front, you do your thing, you send it to them, and you're done, right? So that's called Fiverr with, I think it's, let me just check this. Yeah, so that's the website. Okay, so Shaswata is saying, is starting a YouTube channel a good thing as a beginner? Well, let me tell you this. I've been working on YouTube for the last 7 years, right? I've been making multiple videos a week for 7 years without taking any breaks. Even on vacation, I would have the videos lined up to post, right? To give you an idea, the first full year that I worked 6 days a week, right, all day long, after a full year, I made about $100. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so Venkat is saying I passed his question. Well, the questions are popping up pretty fast, so can you please repeat it? Okay, is Nuke X alone worth it without knowing a 3D software for VFX? I would say no. Let's see, plugin for Maya simulation, where there are already quite a few plugins, so I'm not sure what plugin you're referring to. Okay, so Ravi's saying he wants to protect the game. Well, the thing is, if you're a student, you're not a business, then it's kind of hard, because typically protecting copyright is something done by a business. You can have a business registration as a student, though, but it's kind of complicated. If you really want to go all in and make sure that's 100% protected, you would have to put something in writing with a notary public, which is quite expensive, right? But yeah. Usually once your game is really published and out there, then it's very hard for others to copy it, because then it's obvious that they're copying it, right? Okay, so Venkat put his question in. How should I work with Arnold materials when exporting scene and rendering it in Houdini or some other platform? Well, the thing is, why would you want to use Arnold materials if you're not using the Arnold renderer, right? I mean, depending on what type of textures you're applying, because you're working with other renderers, you have much more options. Let's say you're working in Substance Painter, why not do it there? Let's say you're working in ZBrush, why not do it there? You will restrict yourself by using the default Arnold materials. Okay, bye, Young Park. Animation degree after I plan to do masters in game designing, which is best country? Haha. What's the best country to do that? I mean, that's kind of hard to say, because that would assume that I know all of them, and of course I don't. From a study program perspective, well, let me put it this way. I think if you were to try and do a training like that in the US, that would not necessarily be because of having the best program, but you would probably be in the best location, right? To for potential work in the future and so forth. Okay. So, and other than that, I mean, I don't know every program in every university, so it's kind of hard to say. Okay, so let's see. Karthi is saying that I skipped his question. Don't know where it is. Would you please mind repeating that quickly so I can address it? Yeah. Okay, not able to figure out how to model cars in 3ds Max or anything. Okay, you're not able to figure out how to model cars. Well, are you not able to model a car, or are you not able to model anything? I mean, once you have a certain method of modeling, you can basically model anything. Let's see, how many and how much models do you make in a week or month? Ooh, that depends. I would first of all say I model every day, and I would be working on several models a day. Not all models are always finished. Sometimes I just model something for fun in Maya and I don't texture it or anything like that. Sometimes I do the entire pipeline, but I would say, I don't know, 10 models a week, something like that. Okay, so Karthi is saying how to start modeling in Maya. Where do you start? Well, you start with the interface, of course. I mean, if you don't know what the buttons are for, you can't do anything. Once you know how the buttons work, what you do is you start with polygonal modeling using basic geometrical shapes. So to make that more simple, you start working with balls and with cubes and pyramids and tubes and so forth. And just try and see if you can make something from that, right? Okay, should I start with Maya or Blender? I know software doesn't matter, but according to future industry standards, which software? Okay, well, the thing is this. it's important for you to be able to work in 3D because the basic elements of 3D are the same, whether you work in Blender or 3ds Max or Maya or Cinema 4D or whatever, right? Now, in the industry, there are more companies working with Maya than with Blender, although that is changing. But what's most likely that will happen to you is you will spend years working in one thing, then you go for an interview at a studio and they'll say, oh, by the way, we use a different platform and you got 3 days to learn it, right? That happens all the time. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. And, you know, to make it easier, start with Maya or Blender. Well, Blender is obviously free, but if you get Maya as a student, that's also free for the first 3 years, okay? Okay, so Michael DeSanta is following up on his car question and saying, don't know how to make those little details like the cuts in the bonnet and so forth. Well, basically that is by beveling and extruding edge loops, right? That's one way to do it, or do it manually, but that's like a part of a standard modeling methodology that you should be able to do in any model. So I would focus on something other than cars, try to figure that out, and then go back to cars, right? So Alan Cooper is saying, my gear. Okay, is that a question? Okay, let's see. Can I make a tutorial on Substance Painter to Maya displacement map with proper explanation? I already did. Alan's saying the link is dead. All right. Let's see. Can I talk about texturing and realism? Yeah, I can. Well, I'll give you, I'll share a little story with you guys that might be interesting, right? So you see the whole trend where textures are becoming more and more high resolution, right? We went from 256 maps to 512, 1024, 2K, 4K, 8K, and so forth. Now, this puts a bigger and bigger strain on hardware and on resources. Now, I was talking to a gentleman that worked on How to Train Your Dragon 2. I don't know if you guys saw that animated movie. And he basically said that because of the resource impact, what they would do is they would have different maps for different distances to the camera. So if you had an extreme close-up shot of the dragon passing the camera, for that shot and that shot alone, they would have, for example, 4K or 8K texture maps. All the others where the dragon was flying in the back somewhere, there would be no need for that. So that's one way to deal with that requirement going up and up and up. Okay, so Harry is saying how to render environment. What do you mean by environment? You mean like mountains and forests and so forth? Basically, a render is a render. I'm not sure if I understand your question. Okay, do I prefer a Maya viewport or Arnold Live render viewport? Well, I just usually use Maya viewport for the simple reason that I don't do a lot of texturing in Maya. Let's see, currently learning Nuke X, so I don't know what I need to make for my portfolio to get a job in the VFX industry. I know how to use Maya, but I'm not an expert. Okay. You don't know what you need to make your portfolio. I mean, if you're working in nukes and you are able to create certain effects like smoke and explosions and water and whatnot, that's what you would put in there. Okay, can I suggest a laptop for learning 3D under $1,200? Well, the thing is this, first question is, does it have to be a laptop? For the simple reason that a desktop is usually much cheaper, so you'll get more for your money. And also, if there's any problem with your desktop and you need to swap out hardware, upgrade hardware, you can do that more easily than with a laptop, right? For example, a hard disk for a laptop is way more expensive than a hard disk for a PC, right? So that's one thing. Second, when you want to get whatever system you choose for, You would, for example, look at the software you're going to use, right? Let's say you want to work with Maya. If you go to the Autodesk website, it has certain requirements as to what the system specs are. Now, once you know that, you kind of need to decide, okay, do you want an Intel CPU or an AMD CPU? AMD CPUs are way, way, way cheaper, and they're competing quite nicely with Intel. It's important to have a high core count. So if you got, like, say, an Intel i7, 8 core or higher, that's cool. Of course, RAM memory, very important. I think the minimum right now is 8 gigabytes for Maya. And then, of course, a good video card. Now, the video card, keep in mind, though, that most applications, they render on CPU, not GPU, right? So I would say that the CPU at this point in time is more important. But that said, more and more applications are moving towards GPU rendering, okay? Okay, so Eduardo was saying, what motivated me to do tutorials? Well, cool question. Well, when I started out in 3D, let me go back. When I started out, not in 3D, but when I started out, I was basically a 16-year-old kid that had a paper route and saved my money to buy a computer. And computers were brand new back then. Nobody had computers. And you probably may have heard of the Commodore 64. This was even way before that, right? So I bought that thing, saved all my money with my paper route, bought that thing, and I wanted to play games, but there weren't any games. So I had to learn how to program. And I started to code my own programs and my own games. And then many, many, many years later, my passion for drawing and my passion for computers came together, and I started in 3D. And what I found is that there's very little out there, especially back then, to help you move along when you need to learn, right? So I decided to do my YouTube videos to give back to the community for those who are living in areas where there's nothing available, or for those who don't have the financial means to, for example, go to college. So to make a long story short, the reason why I make tutorials is to give back to the community. Joe D is saying, do I have any Maya Mash tutorials? Yes, I actually have a Mash playlist. I did several. Let's see. Okay, they're starting to pile up fast. I want to come. Should we pirate the software or buy them? But they're so expensive. Okay, well, first of all, should you pirate the software? Never, never, ever, ever do that. I know it's easy to say if you got money, but the thing is, almost every software platform has a free option, right? So, for example, you can get Maya 3 years completely free on a student license. And you don't have to be a registered student in a specific school. If you sign up as a student, even if you're a self-student, you'll get that for free to work with. Illegal software usually has a lot of viruses and stuff in there, so be careful with that, right? Thank you so much. Yeah, you're my hero too. Let's see. Want to become a 3D compositor. What do I do for that? Well, first of all, please explain to me what your understanding is of a 3D compositor, right? Because there are different meanings in the industry, and people mean different things when they talk about compositor. So I need to know first what you mean exactly before I answer your question. I mean, compositing is usually something as an afterthought that you would do, right? But you specifically say 3D compositor, so that's why I'm asking that question. Okay, so Pontaz is saying, if you would want to ask me to, let's see, somebody would want to hire you for 3D process modeling, what's the hourly rate you would ask for? Are you talking about what people would ask for or what I would ask for? Okay, what I would ask for it? Well, that very much depends on the client. Now, again, this is kind of an interesting discussion, right? I'll give you an example, something for you to think about. Let's say your next door neighbor or your friend or somebody from school or whatever says, hey, can you make me a 3D logo, right? So you make the 3D logo and you say, well, here it is. And you ask them for, I don't know, $10, whatever, right? Now, the next day you get a phone call from the corporate office at Nike, right? They're having this international campaign. They want a 3D logo. You make it for them. You send it to them and you ask them $10. Would you do that? Let's see if anybody comes back on that. Okay, so the reason why I'm saying this is there's a value of your time and then there's a value of your work, right? Now, if you create the 3D logo for your next door neighbor, there's a different value because once you make the 3D logo for Nike, they're gonna use it all over the world, and make tons of money off of it and so forth and so on, right? Plus, it's also a case where if you're making something for Nike, you have to go over there 27 times, have meetings, talk to all different types of people. It's going to cost you way more time. You're going to have to change everything 27 times and so forth. So the whole value proposition is different. So how much money do I ask for prop modeling? That totally depends on what it's going to be used for, who it's for, whether I know the person or not, whether there are going to be change requirements or not. But that can be anything from, I don't know, totally for free because it's my friend, right? Up to, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000. Okay, video compositing software. I use After Effects on occasion. Not too much, but I like that. I played with Nuke though. So I'm still waiting on that answer about the 3D compositing. I don't remember who asked that specifically, but what they meant by that. So Robinson is saying, is it too hard to explain Indian about a video game and my 3D modeling stuff? Okay, sorry, buddy. I don't really understand what you're asking here. So best software for FX, Houdini, hands down, for sure. Do I know how big companies like Pixar recruit their employees for a film project? Yes, I do. I've worked with a number of people at Pixar, and usually, or almost always, they work with somebody they know, right? So they know them because it's somebody that's a relative to somebody that's already working there. So it's a close-by network. That's why I always emphasize you need to make sure that you build your network, right? You need to make sure you're active on forums that are relevant, that you're in groups and so forth. Oh, okay. So it's about 3D modeling and how to get that message to your parents that this is a serious activity and not just a hobby. Is that it? Well, first of all, and I get this question a lot, honestly. When you have a passion for 3D modeling and you want to make a career out of that, parents typically have a hard time because the only thing they see is games and movies, right? And for them, games and movies is playing around and entertainment, and it's not a job. Now, if you want to convince your parents, then why not apply your skills onto something that is more relevant towards something that looks more like a job, right? For example, model parts of a 3D machine for a factory, right? Create something that is useful for the local dentist, for the local factory, for whatever. And they will actually see firsthand that you are having a practical application for your knowledge and that you're making money. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. So are you the Mr. Wilson that stands behind the fence? Ever seen that TV show? Okay. Choice for doctor or engineer. Okay. You say you're ready to take a freelance job. Okay. So basically the question is, when are you ready to become freelance? Again, I get that question all the time. You are, well, first of all, when are you freelance? You're freelance when people pay you. Simple as that, right? Sorry, Mr. Wilson. No disrespect intended. Yeah, so sorry, lost my train of thought there. Okay, so Ravi's saying, do I think RTX Quattro is worth it? I'm going to find out in a few days because I ordered an RTX 6000. It's coming in a few days, and I'm really excited about that. And why is it worth it, by the way? RTX is a ray tracing technology, and ray tracing technology is awesome, and for that reason. Okay, how do I start my modeling career, and what is my inspiration to do modeling? Well, the reason why I got into 3D modeling is because since I was a teen, I was always fascinated by three things basically. One is drawing, two is computers, and three is storytelling, right? And if you get into 3D, you have the ability to create whatever you want and tell whatever story you want. And I guess that's the reason. Okay, so Roman is saying, is there any way to estimate the demand and proposal on the 3D labor market? In other words, how do you think, how many people compete for a 3D job? Isn't the competition quite dense? Yes, the competition is quite dense. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of 3D people out there. But keep this in mind. If you go onto ArtStation, right, you have, I don't know, thousands of people that are equally good as you are or better than you and so forth, right? So how are you going to stand out in ArtStation? But keep in mind, though, people seem to always focus on film and games. Now, let's say you have a kitchen manufacturing company in your village or city, right? Do you really think they go onto ArtStation? They never heard of ArtStation because they're not in the 3D industry. They have no idea, right? So my advice is always create your own market. Go up to them, and I said this before in live streams, you knock on their door and you say, hey, I'm really interested in kitchens. Can I, have a look, whatever, right? And while you're working around there, you're going to say, well, if you guys sell these kitchens, what do? Do you build them one by one and then take a photo and put them in a magazine? Because if you allow me to do that in 3D, it's going to save you 80% of your money. That's how you create your own market, right? And the person you're talking to never heard of ArtStation. So you need to be the big fish in the small pond, not the small fish in the big pond, okay? What tool did I use for modeling in my beginning stage? Maya. I always use Maya. I mean, I use 3ds Max. I played a little bit with Blender. I played a little bit with the Cinema 4D in the past. But for the most part, I would say Maya, yeah. Okay, so let's see. Thanks, Mike. You have answered my question. You mentioned that I have to be active in forums. What kind of forums do you mean? Because no, there are so many forums that discuss the industry. Okay, well, basically any forum that's related to the 3D industry, and one of them, for obvious reasons, is my own. And let me just copy that. So this is a good start. This is my personal forum. It's basically a hangout group, and there are like 3,000 artists in there. But the cool thing is, this is a group for everyone. It's for anybody that is completely new to the industry, up to people that are industry veterans. It's a very respectful group, and it's a good way to start building your network, right? Let's see. Do I use a light setup or light every scene independently? I don't know what the 27 question marks are for, but I do individual lighting for every scene. Can you say my name? Boomfast YouTube. Okay. Yeah, so Jason is part of the group, and he has been for years, so he knows all about it. And I think there are other people here that are already in that group as well. How to know if a client wants to scam or cheat? Make sure you got a contract. Okay, Quadro and GeForce. Well, I'm definitely not an expert, but you could say that GeForce cards are consumer cards, so they're more intended for gameplay, where Quadro cards are professional cards, and they're much more related to heavy rendering for 3D applications and so forth, right? Let's see, are made in India, they're more cheaper. Okay, so if the GPU and CPU are made in India, then they're way more cheaper than other countries. Yeah, but that makes sense. But the thing is, I mean, the wages are lower as well, right? And that's a whole different discussion. I mean, we're talking about economics, right? I mean, if I go online and I want to sell a 3D prop, for example, I'll find a similar prop where I'm, for example, selling it for $75. Somebody in a country where the wages are much lower will sell it for $5. That's just the way the world works, and that's just how economy works, and what are you going to do about it? Let's see. So Nelson is saying, if I can render my job with the GeForce, why would I go for a hugely more expensive Quadro? Is it worth the difference? Well, the thing is, an RTX 6000 is worth $5,000, right? And a GeForce 1080 is maybe $700. So is it worth it? Well, usually Quadro cards are only used by studios because, you know, if you're a freelancer, who's going to pay $5,000 for a card, right? And if you can do the job with what you have, do that. Okay, so Jay is saying, what suggestion do I have for beginners in 3D? I would definitely learn the software, but I would mostly focus on the ability to look and understand. What do I mean by that? For example, let's say there's an animated show you like or a movie you like, right? Look at the same movie 4 times. First time, just look at it. Second time, look at the movie and only pay attention to lighting. How do they light every scene? Third one, pay attention to what kind of shot, wide angle, close-up shot, extreme close-up shot, over-the-shoulder angle, and so forth. What lenses did they use? How long, how short, you know, how much focus, and so on. And then you do it again, but then you look at, you know, how people interact, and you do it again. And you start to understand and learn how things work. And your job as a 3D artist is to reproduce that stuff. I mean, not if you're modeling a table, but if you're, let's say, an animator, or you are part of a bigger scene where you need to have a big impact on it, you need to understand this stuff, right? Contact me on freelance website for animation. Suddenly he stopped responding to me when I told him it needs to send some money for a render firm. Was I wrong? No, I mean, if you are approached by a client to do work, right, you give them a quote and you'll say, okay, whatever you're asking me to do, this is going to cost you X amount, 100, 500, 5,000, 5 million, whatever, right? They expect you to give them a price that includes everything, unless they say otherwise. So they'll ask you, can you build a 3D model house for me, whatever? Okay, sure, it's going to cost you $500. They don't want you to say, oh, now I need more money, now I need more money. They only expect you to do that, and it's only fair for you to do that if it is a fair thing, because they change their mind, they need more, you need to do more, or they ask you things that you didn't agree on in the first place, right? So it all depends on whether you already got money for this or not. Now, to answer some of your questions, do I use render farms? I have in the past when I was doing more production work. It's a good way, if you don't have your personal render farm, to not occupy your system or systems full time. When I do a render on my own system and I got a fairly fast system, sometimes it's crunching like literally for days. And I don't really want that because I don't have 27 computers, right? So sending it to a render farm is quick and easy. About product lighting rendering. Okay. So can you tell me something about product lighting rendering? Do you want to know about the product lighting, or you want to know about the product lighting rendering? Because product lighting is something very different than scene lighting. And there are typical setups for that. You have a fill light and a key light and a rim light and so forth, three-way light setup. When it comes to rendering that light, it all depends on what application you're using. For products, I like to use KeyShot because it's very convenient and very fast, and you have a lot of options. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I see some questions coming about people getting discouraged by the industry, right? They're not getting feedback from people, they're not getting responses on their job applications, and so forth and so on. Now, I wish I could tell you this magical thing where everything would go away and everything would be great and happy and fine and unicorns and rainbows. Problem is, that's not how it happens. It is very tough out there. I always say 3D is the best possible way to make no money at all, right? There are many, many ways that are much easier for you to make money than doing this, right? So you really need to want it, and you need to work very hard and be very dedicated, and don't be discouraged. And if you get discouraged on occasion, everybody does, but talk to somebody like a close friend that understands the 3D industry, talk about it, and just, sit in a corner and cry for 5 minutes and then get up and get moving again, right? Let's see, it's like interesting. So KSR is saying, recently completed Maya. Well, I don't know what completing Maya means. I mean, I've been working in Maya for like forever, and I'll probably never complete Maya. But anyway, so especially FX, suggest any software related software. Okay, so for FX, I would suggest Houdini. Let's see, Tanvir, thank you. Joining now. Are you usually active in the group to give advice to others? Oh, in the group. Yeah, I'm in the group every day, all day. It's the forum group, you mean, on Facebook? That's my personal group. It's an extension of my YouTube channel, and I am literally there every day. Let's see, can we prefer animation mentor online school through animation? Can we prefer animation mentor online school to learn? If you have no other option and you have to learn animation online, I would do it. If I had the opportunity to learn from somebody face-to-face, I would prefer that. Let's see, Joe says, in Maya, do you use render layers? Yes, I do. But it kind of depends on what type of work it is. So when I'm doing, for example, product rendering, I will want to do a lot of compositing work later on, and I'll use those layers to do that. So I can tweak each stack individually. But again, it kind of depends on the application. Let's see. Glad to see you finally touching base with 3ds Max. It's great software. Well, slightly better modeling tools. Okay, we'll see. I think 3ds Max is cool. I think it's very similar to Maya in a lot of ways. I kind of determined for myself that I'm going to use 3ds Max specifically for more hard surface, exteriors, interiors, and more photorealistic rendering, and that I'll use Maya for the other hard surface stuff and kind of go from there. Maybe it'll change over time. I don't know. So let's see. Lee is saying, can Maya only be enough for modeling? It can. Yeah. Somebody asked that before. You can basically do everything in Maya if you want. Whether that will be enough, that's kind of up to you. RB Gaming, hi from India. How are you? I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for asking. So just in case I didn't mention this just yet, right? I'll be announcing a new challenge in January, and this is going to be a very special one because it's going to be a ZBrush character sculpting challenge, right? This is brand new information. I haven't told this to anyone yet, so you're the very, very first. So if you're into that, keep my channel, keep an eye on my channel so you don't miss that announcement, right? Okay, so speech about self-taught or college that I gave at college. Yeah, I did. That has not been recorded because typically they don't record stuff like that. However, I did a live stream on exactly this topic where I talked about this, but that's only available to my patrons, right? So whenever a live stream like this is finished, it goes offline, right? And then the only people that can go back and review it again are my patrons, right? Now that may sound very expensive, but if you want to become a patron and get early access to videos and stuff like this, it's $5 a month, right? So is anybody here wanting that link? Just hang on. Okay, guys, so a little bit of promotion here, right? So this is my Patreon page, and I know that there are several patrons of mine already in this chat right now. The Patreon page basically allows you to support me financially by as little as $1 a month, right? And starting at $5 a month, you get a whole bunch of perks, right? You get early access to new videos, usually a day before everybody else. You get behind the scenes videos, you get files that I share. You get access to these live streams after they're down and so forth. So if anybody here wants to check that out, then you can do that. Yep. All right. Okay. Online school, like Think Dance Studio really help you to make set your foot in the industry much faster. Okay. So when it comes to online schools, there are good ones and bad ones, obviously, like everything in the world, right? You kind of need to do some research and talk to people who actually did the classes before you dive into that. If you are a very disciplined learner and you can spend the time you need to spend without people pushing you, then online is a great solution. If not, then it might be better for you to go to an actual program. So 300 to 350 rupee. I have no idea how much money that is. So does anybody know what the rate is from rupee to? I mean, how many rupees is $5? $5 US. Let me just check that, or maybe somebody knows. Okay, I'll check it. Yeah, there you go. 357 rupees. Yeah. So for 357 rupees a month, you get early access to new videos. You get access to these live streams. You get files if I share them, like ZBrush brushes and files and other stuff. And yeah, very good. Let's see. All right. It's worth start building a reputation through selling assets, asset store straight after college, or do you think that will be immediately destroyed? Well, Cosmo Light is asking about selling assets. Why would that destroy your reputation? I mean, there's nothing wrong with selling assets, and it would actually help your reputation because you're showing them that you have a keen business sense, right? So if that's a way for you to make additional money, even while you're studying, why not? I mean, just make sure that your software is legal when you do that. And keep in mind that the reputation is brutal. So if you go on something like TurboSquid, you got tens of thousands of people selling their stuff there, right? So yeah, that's up to you. But if you can make money, if you want to do something like that, my tip would be specialize in something. There's a guy on I think CG Trader. He specializes in food. He only makes 3D food, nothing else. Other people only do cars, right? Let's see. What do we got? Okay, RB Gaming saying, what's the topic of the stream? It's a completely open topic, so basically anything you want. Okay, so Astro Spawn is saying, any suggestions for a good tutorial series in Marvelous Designer? Well, they're not a lot. The ones that they make themselves, they're horrible. They can hardly understand what they're saying, and they're very short and so forth. There's one or two. There's one guy, Travis something, I think, but he quit. He stopped months ago. And then the other person that does Marvelous Designer tutorial videos, that's me. So I did videos in version 7, and I actually just picked up version 9 yesterday. Started recording my first new videos, and yeah, they're going to be online within weeks. Where to find storyboarding for animation practice? Oh, that's so cool, because I got exactly what you need. Hang on. I'm just picking up a specific link for you guys if the website wants to open. Just give me one sec, guys. Would I model a porn scene? No, I would not. Talking about killing your reputation, don't do it. Let's see. Okay, so here's a link to my website, and on my website you have all sorts of courses, and one of them is specifically on storyboarding, right? So yeah, check that out. Let's see. Okay, so to get back to that porn question, and just on a serious note, right? I would definitely be very careful with that. Now, that said, you probably heard of a thing called Second Life. Now, I'm not going to say that Second Life is a porn thing. However, it's more an adult role-playing world, if you will. But there's a lot of money to be made there making props that they then sell on Second Life. So if you know anybody that works or that is in Second Life and has a store, you can ask them to make props so they can sell it in their store on Second Life, and you can make revenue off of that, right? Well, thanks, Toon Man. Starting salary for animator in the US, that can be quite low. I mean, we're looking at maybe, I don't know, 20,000. I mean, keep in mind that when you get started in the industry, the first couple of years, you're going to be, you're not going to be making a lot of money, and you're going to be doing a lot of work, and you're not going to be doing the coolest work because you have to pay your dues, right? And after a certain amount of time, when somebody else comes in new, you kind of move up the ladder, right? So Dark Soul Gaming is saying, yeah, 20K. So like I said, it's a very low wage, 20K, but we have to start somewhere, right? Let's see. Is there a plan for tutorial or stylized house on ZBrush? I did that in Maya, actually, not specifically in ZBrush, no. Let's see. The storyboard on my website. Hang on. So the storyboarding course, if you scroll all the way down, it's not the bottom one, but just one above that, right? So you go to that page, you scrub all the way down, and then you go up one, and it's called Storyboarding Foundations. Okay? Let me know if you find that, all right? Let's see. Do you need a university degree for a job? No, you don't. Does it help? Yes, it helps. But I know people that have no university degree and are really good. I know people that do have a university degree and are not good, and then vice versa, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about whether you are good. Let's see. Adele saying, can it be 20K on the side of another regular full-time job? Well, probably not, because for that 20K as a starting animator, they're going to work you to the bone. Okay, so Dark Soul Game saying, I'm looking for storyboarding which is ready to animate. Okay, so basically you're looking for existing storyboards so you can then go out and model and animate. Well, there's Google Storyboards. Let's see. Currently making about 55K annually doing art phys. Is that decent? I basically do everything in the pipeline. Well, Asher, let me ask you, what country do you live? And second question, so what country do you live? How old are you, and how long have you been in the industry? So you're in the US, okay. What area of the US? Southwest? Okay. Okay, so New York State or New York City? Okay. Well, and how long have you been working in the industry? Final question. Alrighty. Well, the thing is this: if you were living anywhere else, right, I would say that the money you're making, doing art phys, would be extremely high, right? Like top 10% worldwide. However, considering you're living in New York City, where the prices are typically twice as high as everywhere else, that kind of changes that a little bit. So I would say, based on your experience, 4 years, you're 27, you're working in New York City, 55K is still a very, very, very nice salary, right? It's way higher than most people. I know people that make they do the same thing. They're about the same age. They got the same experience. They're doing about 26, 27 a year. Let's see. Tune Man, is it hard to get a job? Well, it depends. If you got a working permit and you have a sponsorship, then it shouldn't be a huge problem, depending on your skill set. During a job interview, they can ask you to share your models, animations, etc. Yeah, of course. And also, what they will do a lot is they will literally sit you down and say, give you a piece of paper or something and say, here, make this. So they put you on the spot, they put you behind the system, and they literally ask you to model something while they're watching. Okay, guys, well, we're going 1 hour and 10 minutes. I want to go another 5 or so. So I'm going to shut down at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So it's about another 5 minutes or so, right? Okay. Let's see. Xenomorph saying, is Maya and ZBrush enough to start a job? Usually, yeah. Astrospon is saying, I'm Vinny. Okay. Yeah, I know you, buddy. I didn't recognize your name. I knew you quite well. Yeah, no worries. White House guy, right? Yeah. Master Yeah, yep. Okay, go on. So any interesting, juicy questions before I sign off? Anything? How am I? Well, I'm good. How are you? Have I ever created models for the legal field? Well, actually, yes, which is very cool. So whenever I get questions to do something like that, even if there's not a lot of money in it, I do it because you get exposed to a world that's interesting. So I did that. I worked for the medical industry. I worked for scientists. I did visualizations for scientists where they were talking about something. I had no idea what they were talking about, but they made me understand what I needed to animate, and I did that, right? But yeah, if you're working for law enforcement, let's say for the court system, you might have to recreate rooms or situations, road situations, and so forth. Yeah. Let's see. Are there any plugins for Booleans to clean up? Well, my advice would be not to use Booleans at all. Was it hard for me to learn this? I don't know what you mean by this, but I spent a lot of time on this. Am I good at drawing? Well, that's weird to say, but I could say that I'm not bad. I mean, I got a traditional drawing background for almost 20 years. How much wood can you woodchuck? I thought you were going to bed, Jason. Okay, let's do one more question, guys. What do we got? Okay, is procedural texturing the future? Yes, it is. That's not, well, it's a nice question, but it's not a very elaborate one, right? So let's do one more. Okay, there you go. There's my final question. Nice one. If you had to pick one field for yourself, would it be modeling, animation, rendering, lighting, rigging, or other? I would have to go with modeling. I mean, the modeling aspect of 3D is the most visual aspect. I mean, everything else makes it better, I guess, right? The light, the textures, and so forth. Now, I would love to say animation, but I'm not a great animator, so and I probably never will be. So that's why I have to go with modeling. Modeling gives you so much power to tell stories, and you can basically model anything, right? Okay, guys. Well, that's it for me today. Oh, the question is, what is procedural texturing? Okay. I cannot answer that in 2 minutes. You got PBR texturing and procedural texturing. Procedural texturing is basically when you automate the process, right? PBR texturing is like, for example, what you do in Substance Painter. So back in the old days, let's say a year ago, people would make textures in, for example, Photoshop, right? Now, people still do that on some occasions. Why not? I mean, it works. Procedural is more where you have a procedural pipeline, where you have a node-based system where certain actions are automated, right? Okay, well, yeah, that's it for me, guys. I see one Dutch person, Zuid koffiekoekjes, and there are probably very few people here that know what that means, but they're delicious. Am I planning on doing a talk at BUAS? Well, I haven't been asked, so no. I know that my the next talk that I'm scheduled to do at university will most likely be at the University of Hull in the UK, right? Okay, so yeah, there you go, guys. Well, please check out the forum if you haven't already. I'd love to see you guys there. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all your questions. And love to see you guys again. All right, bye, guys. Bye.